Story 1. The exit that wasn't on any map. The sign appeared too late to be real. A green highway placard that read, Exit 13B, bright in my headlights, then gone the moment I passed it. My GPS didn't react at all, but my radio, which I hadn't turned on, whispered in my own voice, Take it. This is the last clean turn. I was driving home after visiting a friend, later than I meant to, with that familiar mix of fatigue and stubbornness that convinces you you're fine until you're suddenly not. The interstate was mostly empty, the kind of midnight road where your headlights feel like the only proof you exist. The air had a damp chill, and a light fog gathered in the low fields, turning distant lights into smeared halos. My phone signal had been weak for an hour, but the GPS still held my route line steady. It kept promising I'd be home in a little over 90 minutes, and I clung to that number like it was a contract. I had a coffee in the cup holder that had gone cold, and I kept taking small sips anyway because the act of drinking felt like staying awake on purpose. That's when I saw the exit sign. It wasn't a construction detour sign or a hand-painted warning. It was a standard green placard, reflective, mounted properly, the kind you trust because it looks official. It said, Exit 13B, and beneath it, in smaller lettering, a destination name I'd never heard of. The letters were clean. The arrow pointed right. I glanced at my GPS out of reflex, waiting for the route to adjust or for the familiar take the exit voice to chime in. Nothing. The route line stayed straight ahead. No reroute, no warning, no acknowledgement that I'd just passed a perfectly normal sign for a perfectly abnormal exit. I looked back at the road and realized the ramp was still there, curving off into darkness. It looked freshly paved, dark and smooth, with reflective markers like tiny eyes lining the edge.
It felt like a choice that was being offered. Like a door left open in a hallway you didn't know existed. I should have stayed on the interstate, I knew that. My hands even tightened on the wheel as if my body was ready to refuse. But then the radio clicked. I hadn't turned it on. It had been silent all night. The speaker crackled softly, and my own voice spoke, calm and close, as if someone were sitting in the passenger seat. Take it, it said. This is the last clean turn. I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was impossible, and my brain wanted to puncture the impossibility with sound. Instead, I just stared forward, breathing shallowly. The radio didn't repeat itself. It waited. The ramp slid alongside me for another second, then began to fall behind, and in that moment, I felt a pressure in my chest that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with certainty. It was the strange conviction that if I didn't turn, I would keep driving in a straight line forever, and something would be waiting at the end of that straight line, patient and prepared. So I took the exit. The moment my tires crossed onto the ramp, the highway noise changed. The hum of the interstate faded as if someone had closed a door behind me. The fog thickened immediately, not in the gradual way fog normally does, but like I'd driven into a different layer of air. My headlights stopped traveling as far. The reflective markers on the ramp looked brighter, closer, more crowded. My GPS screen blinked once and went blank. Not the no signal warning, not a frozen map, just black, like the device had decided not to participate. I tried to tap it to wake it, and the screen remained dead. At the end of the ramp, instead of joining another highway or feeding into a normal intersection, the road narrowed into a 2-lane stretch lined with trees. There were no signs, no streetlights, no houses, just asphalt, fog, and trunks rising like walls. The radio clicked again.
My own voice returned, softer now. Don't stop, it said. I didn't plan to. The road didn't feel like a place you could stop and still be sure you'd start again. I drove on, watching for any hint that I'd rejoin the main route. The fog swirled low over the road, and sometimes my headlights caught the edge of it and made it look like movement crossing in front of me. My hands began to ache from gripping the wheel. After a few miles, I saw another sign, not green this time, white and reflective like a local road sign. It had no town name, no mileage, no route number. It had only one word: return. Under it was an arrow pointing straight ahead, as if the road itself was insisting that returning required moving forward. I swallowed hard and kept going. My phone, which had been quiet, vibrated once. The screen lit, and for the first time in an hour I saw a notification, but it wasn't a message. It was a call screen. Incoming call. Me. My own number. My own contact name. My breath caught. I didn't answer. I watched it ring until it stopped. Immediately, the radio clicked. Wrong choice, my voice said. Not angry, just disappointed, like a supervisor watching you ignore a procedure. You're going to make it take longer. The fog thickened again. The road ahead narrowed further until it felt like the trees were leaning in. I fought the urge to turn around. Turning around on a dark two-lane road is a commitment, and I didn't trust the space behind me to remain the same shape if I tried. Then, ahead in the fog, I saw tail lights. Relief hit me hard. Another car meant witnesses. Another car meant the world hadn't narrowed down to just me and this road. I followed the taillights, keeping a safe distance, letting them guide me. The car's shape was hard to make out through fog, but the lights were real enough. They turned gently with the road, steady and calm. The taillights slowed, then stopped. I slowed too, heart pounding, and as I came closer I realized there was no car. There were no wheels, no body, no bumper. Just taillights suspended in fog at the height a car would have, glowing patiently. They blinked once, like a turn signal. Then my own voice came through the radio again, warm this time, almost kind. There, it said. Now you can stop. I kept driving. I drove through the taillights, and for a second, my cabin filled with red glow, like I'd passed through something thin and luminous. The lights vanished behind me as if they had never existed. The fog loosened slightly, and ahead I saw an actual intersection with an actual stop sign. I nearly cried with relief. The stop sign was ordinary, the kind of object that means the world still follows rules. As I slowed, I noticed something on the stop sign post. A small metal plate, like an old asset tag. It had a number stamped into it. 13B. My hands went cold. I sat at the stop sign for too long, staring at that stamped plate, feeling the weight of having taken an exit that wasn't supposed to exist, and now finding its number embedded where it shouldn't be. The radio clicked one last time. My own voice whispered, intimate and satisfied. Good, it said. Now you know the way back. Then the phone rang again. Incoming call. Me. And this time, against every instinct, my thumb hovered over the answer button, because the worst part was realizing the road wasn't trying to trap me forever. It was trying to teach me a route. Story 2. The wrong turn sign everyone avoided. The locals didn't warn me about wild animals or bad weather. They warned me about a single left turn outside town, and they said it like a rule, not advice. If you miss the highway, don't take Old Mill Road. Drive until you find lights again. I missed the highway, and Old Mill Road was the only turn that looked like it wanted me. I stopped in a small town because my gas light had come on, and the detour had already turned my trip into a guessing game.
The town was the kind of place where the main street has one diner, one hardware store, and a gas station that also sells bait. It was early evening, still not fully dark, but the sky was bruised with clouds, and the air had that metallic hint that means rain is coming. Inside the gas station, the cashier looked up at me and nodded, polite but guarded. There was a local radio station playing softly, something old and country, and a bulletin board covered in flyers for lost pets and church breakfasts. I paid, grabbed coffee I didn't really want, and asked the question travelers always ask in places like that. What's the fastest way back to the interstate? The cashier didn't answer immediately. His eyes flicked toward the window, toward my car, and then toward the darker edge of town, like he was checking something. Miss the highway? He asked. Not yet, I said. Just trying to make sure I don't. He took a slow breath. If you miss it, he said carefully, don't take Old Mill Road. The way he said it made my stomach tighten. Not dramatic, not superstitious. Practical, like warning someone about black ice. What's wrong with it? I asked. He shrugged, but the shrug didn't hide the tension in his shoulders. It's not a good road at night, he said. You'll think you're saving time. Is it dangerous? I asked. Bad curves? He hesitated, then shook his head. It's not the curves, he said. It's the way it repeats. I laughed lightly, hoping he would smile and make it a normal conversation. He didn't. He just pushed my receipt toward me and said, drive until you find lights again. Don't chase the dark. I walked out with my coffee and tried to dismiss the feeling he'd planted. Small towns have myths. People say things. But the warning stayed in my mind like a splinter. I got back on the road and followed the signs out of town.
The detour route was supposed to reconnect with the interstate a few miles ahead, and at first everything looked fine. 2-lane road, fields, occasional farmhouse lights. Then a heavy rain began, sudden and loud, and the world became a tunnel of water and headlight glare. I missed the highway turn. I didn't realize I'd missed it until the road had carried me past the point where my GPS could correct itself. My phone signal dipped, then vanished, and the map app spun uselessly. I slowed, squinting through rain, searching for any sign that looked familiar. At the next intersection there were two choices, straight ahead into unlit countryside, or left onto a road marked by a small reflective sign. Old Mill Road. The sign looked freshly cleaned, too bright in my headlights. The left turn itself looked like relief. A narrower road lined with trees that would block the wind and rain. It looked like a shortcut that wanted to be taken. I heard the cashier's voice in my head. It's the way it repeats. I should have driven straight. Straight felt safer, but straight also felt like giving up and being lost longer. And in rain, with no signal, the brain craves any decision that feels like control. So I turned left. Old Mill Road swallowed my headlights almost immediately. The trees leaned close, their wet branches catching the light and throwing it back in harsh flashes. The rain made everything shine. The road was slick, and I drove carefully, tense, listening to the tires hiss on wet asphalt. A minute in, I saw a bridge. It was a small wooden bridge, old enough that it had a reflective "one lane" sign at the entrance. I slowed and crossed, watching water churn beneath. On the other side, the road continued straight. 2 minutes later, I saw the same bridge again. Same sign, same wet boards,
same water beneath, moving in the same pattern. My stomach dropped. I checked my speed. I checked the direction of the rain. Everything felt the same, but that could be coincidence. Maybe there were two bridges, identical, close together. I crossed again, heart hammering. 2 minutes later, the bridge appeared again. This time I noticed something that made my mouth go dry. At the entrance to the bridge, nailed to the post, was a small piece of white tape with a number written on it in black marker. I crossed. The bridge appeared again. The tape now read 4. The road was counting my loops. My breath came shallow. I tightened my grip on the wheel, fighting the urge to slam the brakes. The road ahead looked the same each time, but my mind was now hunting for tiny differences. Any proof that I was moving somewhere rather than circling. On the 5th appearance of the bridge, there was a new object. A traffic cone, bright orange, sitting at the side of the entrance as if someone had placed it there mid-storm. On the 6th appearance, the cone had moved closer to the center line. On the 7th, the cone was directly in the lane, forcing me to steer around it. It felt like the road was learning how to guide me. On the 8th, I saw headlights behind me. Relief flared, then died, because the headlights were too far back to be affected by rain. They were bright and clean, as if shining through dry air. They stayed centered in my rearview mirror, matching my speed perfectly, never gaining, never falling back. Then, softly, my phone rang. No caller ID. I didn't answer. The call stopped, and my car speakers clicked, even though the radio was off. My own voice whispered, calm and close. "Stop looping," it said. "Take the bridge." I swallowed hard. "I am taking the bridge," I whispered, then realized how ridiculous that sounded, arguing with an empty car. The voice continued, patient. "Not this bridge," it said.
"The other one." Ahead, the bridge entrance appeared again, but now there were two lanes splitting. One that led to the familiar bridge and another narrow dirt path that dipped into darkness beside the water, marked by a reflective arrow that hadn't been there before. It was a new option created mid-loop, like the road had decided I'd earned the next level. The headlights behind me flared brighter. The voice in my speakers said, "There, that one." I didn't take it. I did something stubborn and simple. I turned the car around right before the bridge, ignoring the slick road and the rain and the fear that the world behind me would not be shaped correctly. The moment I faced the other direction, the headlights behind me were suddenly in front of me, blinding, as if they had teleported to remain behind no matter which way I drove. My skin crawled. Then, ahead through rain, I saw lights. Real lights. Street lights. A cluster of them, warm and steady, the kind that belonged to a town. I drove toward them like a drowning person. The road widened, the trees thinned, the rain eased, and I emerged onto the edge of the same town's main street I had left an hour earlier. The gas station sign buzzed softly, unchanged. I pulled in, shaking, and walked inside, drenched. The cashier looked up, and his expression tightened with the exhausted frustration of someone watching a pattern repeat. "You took Old Mill," he said. I nodded, unable to speak. He sighed. "How many times did you cross the bridge?" he asked. 8, I whispered. He shook his head slowly. "Don't go back out tonight," he said. "Not now that it knows you can count." I stared at him. "What is it?" I asked. He didn't answer directly. He only said quietly, "Some roads remember everyone who ever died on them. Some roads want company." When I finally left the next morning, in daylight, I avoided Old Mill Road by driving 20 extra miles, but as I passed the town's edge, I glanced in my rearview mirror and saw a wooden bridge in the distance, where there shouldn't have been one. At the entrance, a small piece of white tape fluttered on the post. It had a number written on it in neat, black ink. Story 3. The Shortcut Through the Quarry. The map app offered me a shortcut with a gray dotted line, and the label didn't read a road name. It read, Service Route. When I tapped it, the app didn't calculate travel time. It asked, Are you sure you want to enter? It was late enough that everything felt slightly unreal, that floaty fatigue where your thoughts start to slow and your vision narrows to what your headlights can touch. I'd been driving for hours, and the last town I passed through had faded behind me like a memory. The highway was empty, and the road noise had become a kind of hypnosis. My map app rerouted me suddenly with a bright chime. The screen displayed an alternate route that shaved off 12 minutes. It didn't look dramatic, just a small deviation, off the highway, through a stretch of rural road, then back on. 12 minutes isn't much, but when you're tired, 12 minutes feels like mercy. I tapped accept. The route line turned blue and a new instruction appeared. Take next exit. The exit sign arrived quickly, too quickly, and I took it without thinking. The ramp curved down into a low-lying area where fog clung to the ground. The highway noise faded behind me, and the world became quieter, closer. The road off the exit was narrower and darker with no streetlights. My headlights reflected off damp asphalt. The trees were sparse at first, then gave way to open land. I passed a chain-link fence topped with barbed wire, and beyond it I saw industrial equipment silhouetted against the sky. A quarry. The road bent toward it, and my map app showed the dotted line route ahead cutting through the property. I slowed. Quarry sites aren't meant for random drivers at night.
They have gates, signage, security. The map wouldn't normally route through them unless something was wrong. Then the app asked the question centered on my screen in a simple confirmation box. Are you sure you want to enter? There were only 2 buttons, yes and no. My mouth went dry. I had never seen a navigation app ask permission like that. It felt like a human question, not a machine prompt. It felt like the phone wanted me to acknowledge that I knew what I was doing. I glanced around through my windshield. The road ahead led toward a gap in the fence where a gate stood open. One half swung inward. The security light above it flickered, spilling pale illumination onto gravel. I didn't see a guard shack. I didn't see a car. I didn't see any movement. 12 minutes. I tapped yes. The moment I did, my phone brightness dimmed slightly, and the route line became thicker, as if it had been confirmed in a different system. The app did not speak. It remained silent, letting me approach the gate on my own. As my tires hit gravel, the sound changed, louder and harsher. The quarry opened around me like a bowl. Piles of stone rose like small mountains. Heavy machinery sat in dark silhouettes. The air smelled of wet rock and metal. The gate light flickered again, and in that brief dip of brightness, I saw something on the gravel road ahead. Footprints. Not animal prints. Boot prints. They led inward, then vanished where the gravel became too disturbed to read. It looked like someone had walked into the quarry recently, in rain, leaving a trail like an invitation. I told myself it was security staff, a night watchman, a maintenance worker, anything normal. Then my car's dashboard clock blinked. It changed from 1:32 a.m. to 1:32 a.m. again, as if time had restarted. My hands went cold. I checked my phone clock. It also read 1:32.
and it stayed there. I drove forward anyway because stopping in an open industrial pit felt worse than moving.
The road wound between stone piles, and my headlights carved harsh shadows that shifted like slow creatures. In the distance I saw a building, low and rectangular with one light on. The map route line aimed directly at it. As I approached, I realized the light wasn't from a window. It was from an open doorway, a thin strip of warm illumination spilling onto gravel like a welcome mat. I slowed, heart pounding. My phone vibrated. Not a call, not a message. A new prompt appeared in the app, simple and calm. Park here. I stared at it. My throat tightened. I should have turned around. The quarry road behind me was still visible in my mirrors, but it looked slightly longer than it should, as if the distance had stretched, the way roads stretch in nightmares. I kept rolling forward, slow, toward the doorway, because some part of me felt pulled by the idea that the route would end there, that I'd be back on a normal road if I just completed the instruction. That's how navigation works. You follow steps, you arrive, you stop thinking. When I reached the building, my headlights illuminated a sign mounted beside the door. There were no letters, no company name, just a metal plate with a number stamped into it. My stomach dropped. The date, the day, the number I'd been hearing in my head for no reason on this whole trip. The strange sensation that tonight had a number attached to it like a shift. The doorway light flickered, and the warmth inside dimmed, then returned, like a heartbeat. From inside the building, a sound drifted out. A soft, electronic beep, like a scanner acknowledging a badge. Then, in the darkness beyond the threshold, my own voice spoke, quiet and familiar. "You're here," it said. "Good." I didn't respond. I sat in my car with my hands locked on the wheel, breathing shallowly. The app vibrated again. Enter. I shook my head, a small refusal, as if refusing could break a spell. My hands trembled as I put the car in reverse.
The backup camera screen blinked on, and my blood went cold. The camera view did not show the gravel road behind me. It showed the open doorway. From an angle that made no sense, as if the camera were inside the building looking out at my car. In that view, I could see the outline of my car's rear, and I could see a dark shape standing behind it, close enough to touch the bumper. No features, no face, just a density in the air shaped like a person. My lungs locked. I spun in my seat to look behind me through the rear window. There was nothing. The quarry behind me was empty. I looked back at the camera screen. The shape was still there. Then it lifted one hand slowly and placed it on my bumper, and the camera image rippled as if touched. My phone chimed softly. The map app displayed one final prompt. Handoff complete. My hands went numb. I slammed the car into drive and hit the gas, tires spitting gravel as I tore away from the building, not caring about the route line, not caring about the shortcut, not caring about anything but escape. The quarry road twisted, and my headlights bounced wildly. The dashboard clock remained stuck at 1:32. My phone remained silent. The world felt pinned to that minute. Then, just as the gate came into view, the clock jumped. 1:33. Time moved. The gate behind me swung shut with a metallic groan that felt like it vibrated through my bones. The security light above it steadied, no longer flickering. My phone regained signal, and the map app returned to a normal interface, as if nothing had happened. I drove for another hour without taking any exits, staying on the highway until the sunrise began to soften the horizon. At a rest stop, I opened my map history to prove to myself that the quarry route was just a glitch. There was no record of it, no dotted line, no service route, no confirmation prompt, only a blank gap in the timeline from 1:32 to 1:33,
like the app had politely refused to log where I'd been.
And on my car's rear bumper, when I walked around to check for damage, I saw a single, dusty handprint. Not smeared, not partial. A full palm print pressed cleanly into grime, as if someone had placed it there with care. I wiped it away with my sleeve, but the skin beneath my own palm tingled, and I couldn't stop thinking about the phrase the app had used. Handoff complete. As if the wrong turn hadn't been a mistake. As if it had been a delivery.